an apology as well. You'll see from the agenda today, it was down for a double act. You'll notice it's just me. Apologies. Pete Reid, my colleague, is ill and couldn't make it today. So unfortunately, you've got me for half an hour. And I'll try and cover off some of Pete's work as well. Right, let's get into the meat of this. It's customary with these things. Some people start these with quotes. So I was racking my brains. I thought I'd better start with something from antiquity to keep Jeff Bailey happy. So the first quote, my son's doing philosophy as one of his minor things at the minute, and I'm reading Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, which is quite good for a local government worker. It's all about stoicism, which anybody who's had a career in local government knows that you need a lot of stoicism with a small s. But the first quote there, which is, he's asking a question there, the ceaseless sweep of time is forever renewing the face of eternity in such a running river where there is no firm foothold. What is there to value among all the many things that are racing past us? And I think that's really good. And it speaks to us now, even in our modern society. What do we value? Life's moving so fast. The philosopher emperor was asking that way back then. And it's really true for us now, the pace of life, pace of change. And those two words that I've put in bold there are going to be a bit of a theme through my talk about time, how long it takes to do these projects, and what we value or what the funders value in these projects. The second quote, some of you may notice, and I put this in because I'm a planner and I was risking the wrath of your chairman if I didn't mention planning. So that's Patrick Geddes, Scotsman, accepted as the founder of town planning, polymath, multidisciplinary guy. That's one of his well-known phrases, which I think is really appropriate for what we're going to talk about in the built environment. A city or a town, it's more than just a place and space. It's a drama and time. So it kind of builds on that stuff David was talking about heritage changing, towns and cities evolving. It's not just a stasis thing, there is a change. And it's where we live our lives and places we visit. The last one, a wee bit less highbrow. Other football teams are available in time-honoured fashion. But this is a chant the Falkirk football fans sing. We are the people, we are the steeple. And what's interesting about that to me is not just the history of the club, but obviously the way the club have adopted that, the sense that heritage is everybody's, it's ours. It's not just a building owned by somebody or the council or Historic Scotland, it's everybody's heritage. And I think that's quite a good thing in this day and age. Okay, a few caveats. I'm not going to cover a lot of historical details, mainly because Jeff Bailey will correct me and I'll get it wrong. I am not an expert in any of that. I'm a generalist. And there's a whole bunch of people and partners that have been involved in these projects that know way better than I do. And I don't profess to stand up here and know that. I won't go into have a lot of detail. I just can't. I've got time. And if I don't mention every partner, please don't have a go. There's so many people that have been involved in all these projects I'm about to go over. But what I will cover is some of the policy setting, because you can't conserve unless you've got policy. The role of my team, the Planning and Green Space Unit, and mention a lot of the key partners that have been involved in changing Falkirk and helping to conserve and regenerate the area. When I see we quite a lot, it's a big we, it's a whole bunch of partners. It's not just my team, Falkirk Council. And I'll try and go through some of the things, big partnership projects, but I'll also look at some possible ideas for future projects and some that are coming out of the ground very quickly. And maybe mention some challenges. I know David mentioned a lot of challenges, and I will try and be slightly more upbeat than David. But I will mention some of the challenges that are facing local authorities, as well as everybody in the room and all the agencies. So let's start with policy. And I think the topic was conserving, and policy is just the start. Don't worry, this is not a chat on planning policy, because you would all probably fall asleep or leave the room. But it's really important because we can't do a lot of the projects unless we've got really good policy. And the council's had a successive range of policies, from a structure plan that your chairman was involved in, the local development plan policies, supplementary planning guidance, and we also have an historic environment strategy, which is the bottom left graphic there. And a lot of councils don't have that kind of strategy. We do. Ruth Smith, my colleague, has been involved in that, and a number of other colleagues. The range of policies in the top right-hand side of your screen These are the sites, as you would expect to see there, that receive a level of extra statutory protection, and these won't come as a surprise to you for Falkirk and Anthony Wall, archaeological sites, listed buildings, conservation areas, areas of townscape value, historic gardens and design landscapes, battlefield sites, very important, and of course the canals. Falkirk's got 9 conservation areas, and we've carried out reviews of all those conservation areas from time to time. So 100% reviewed, basically. Some councils, I think the current average is about 52% of conservation areas across the whole of Scotland have been reviewed. So we're doing okay for that, but it is very time intensive. And that helps us with things like Article 4 controls, which controls some forms of development, and produce conservation area management plans. Sorry about the acronyms, planners love acronyms. The document on the bottom right-hand side there is an example of a conservation area management plan, which is basically additional guidance for owners of historic properties or developers, and guidance which helps to try and protect and conserve that through all the processes, maintenance, management and plan applications. So we've produced these for all our conservation areas, which have went down really well with a whole bunch of partners and owners and developers. I'm going to go into a wee bit more detail on 2 of our biggest townscape heritage initiatives, which is Falkirk and Bo'ness, and I'll cover off some planning casework as well. But what have the Romans ever done for us? Let's go way back and start with the Romans. Obviously, there's been an amazing amount of work done to get the inscription as a World Heritage Site. We've got a World Heritage Site. Hey, Stirling and Clackmannan, you've not got one, sorry. There was great work done. Jeff was involved, Dr. David Breeze at Historic Scotland. We got the World Heritage Site status as part of the frontiers of the Roman Empire. But I wanted to focus on one project that is still live at the moment. It's due to finish in March next year. And this is called Rediscovering the Antonine Wall. And you could Google that website right at the top there. Fantastic project, 2.2 million, all the 5 councils along the wall involved. Credit to Western Bartonshire, who host the staff. Historic Scotland leading it and funding it as well. And Falkirk area, some fantastic capital projects. Those 6 pictures there on your right show the kind of range of investment that's been done. Lots of co-production with some of our other historical groups, Greenhill and Bonnybridge there, the top left. A fantastic plinth near the community centre celebrating the Roman industrial heritage with Bonnybridge's recent industrial heritage. Fantastic little thing there. We've got a new Calendar Park play area. Any of you take your kids or grandkids to Falkirk, Roman themed play area. It's that subliminal education there. So each of the 5 local authorities got a new play area out of it, and it's fantastic. Historic Scotland got improved access to sea begs out there at Bonnybridge, and any of you in the town centre may have noticed the Cow Wine distance stone, which is just at the edge of the Falkirk High Street. There's a mural still planned, and the bottom right-hand side is the fantastic gateway feature to Keneal Estate, which is based on, I think it was an equine artefact, Jeff can correct me, which inspired this gateway feature to flag the entrance to the fantastic Keneal Estate. But that's only the top 6. These other bullet points there, these other 4 bullet points show you the kind of value that Heritage Lottery put on a whole bunch of other work, not just about conserving the asset. It's about engaging people, awareness, packs for schools, introducing heritage to new groups. There's been an amazing amount of work with refugee people who've came into Falkirk with various charity groups and their stories about coming from the East and the Middle East, all sorts of links with kind of Roman things. Fantastic outreach work, and I'd encourage you to go and look at that. Moving on. I can't mention Falkirk heritage without talking about the canals. You'll all be aware of the Renaissance and the heritage-based regeneration around the canals. And there was all sorts of activism in the first place. Some of you will remember some of these canals, you know, lying empty, full of shopping trolleys, lock gates not working. And they were effectively an eyesore right through the middle of our communities. And that transformation has been absolutely amazing. And let's not forget, that's a scheduled monument. These are all listed buildings, listed structures and listed gates. And back there at the turn of the millennium, that £83 million lottery scheme that the Scottish Canals with other partners, and the council had a hand in that with land ownership up at the Kelpies. That's been an amazing regeneration given original use, water, travel and transport, plus just the towpath, which is absolutely fantastic resource. Our local plan continues to look at that and build on that as an opportunity for further regeneration along that canal corridor. There's been other additions to it. The Charlotte Dundas Heritage Trail, there's a lovely wee trust there that have done a great little scheme, interpretation scheme, just down at the Kelpies between there and the new sea lock, down in the old town in Grangemouth, celebrating the Charlotte Dundas, obviously, Symington's steam-powered ship. The bottom left picture there is the Rosebank Distillery. Any of your whisky lovers will be looking forward to that opening. I know I am. Or even if you drink gin, it will be gin for the first 3 years. So that's MacLeod Distillers that have that. That's a B-listed property. There's so many false dawns with that development, you know, B-listed building, effectively lying empty and vacant and derelict for 30 years. Was once known as the King of the Lowland Malts. So absolutely fantastic that MacLeod Distillers and Michael Laird Architects have got that off the ground. We thought it would never happen. There was a number of false dawns. Would that have happened without the Millennium Link, without all the investment in the canals? Absolutely not. And again, a fantastic part of Falkirk's heritage there, and an icon, the chimney through Falkirk. There's a current scheme going on from the UK government in Tamforhill and Camelin. Lots of deprivation work. Can't go into that. It's a talk in itself. In terms of the future, there's other things cooking away here as part of Falkirk's growth deal, a whole bunch of economic things in Grangemouth and Falkirk, but there's indications that there may well be money allocated with Scottish Canals looking at a national canal centre in Camelin and Falkirk, again based in the canal, and a national art park based along the corridor in some of these parks, again celebrating the industrial heritage of Falkirk. I'm not going to spend long on this one because I know the conference has had a full day on this, but I would recommend the leaflet out in reception, and I know you've got Kate Fuller speaking this afternoon. This was another great partnership project covering a whole bunch of outcomes, but I just want to name check a few of the archaeological outputs there. You can see there in the bottom left picture, that's a dig in Zetland Park, and the bottom right, that's at the medieval Kinneil Church, and huge thanks to Jeff Bailey there as well. And there was one person in the room that even found love at one of these digs here. Put your hand up if you found love and got married on the Zetland Park dig. There she is, Kirsty McAllister. So you nearly got a round of applause there, Kirsty. I think the point there is that there's been a fantastic amount of work done there on Iffley, and I'm not going to go into that, but look out for Kate this afternoon. What I do want to concentrate on is two of our biggest towns with a huge number of listed buildings, both conservation areas. This feels a bit like ancient history now. And Pete, my colleague who's here today, would be telling you about these two, but I'll try my best. But most of you who've been to Bowness will know there's a huge amount of work done, you know, 70s, 80s in conservation. Some of it could have been flattened down, but we managed to retain and protect it. Ian Ludbrook, one of our previous colleagues, did a lot of work trying to protect some of the historic core there. In 2003, there was a £5 million lottery scheme, a THI scheme, Townscape Heritage. Historic Scotland were involved through their conservation area scheme, and this really brought new life back into the town. The priority project was the Hippodrome. If you haven't been, go. You can sit with a nice glass of wine, watch a wonderful movie. It's very civilised. Scotland's oldest cinema. A fantastic project, and improvements to the shop fronts and improvements to some of the public realm. It's been a fantastic project. One of the things that didn't happen at the time, some of you will know the harbour. There was supposed to be a new harbour development to be the kind of new to the town centre gang, and then the Lehman Brothers bank crash happened and the land values went downhill, so the new development of the harbour didn't happen, but we did get the THI, which protected a lot of the heritage in the town centre. Excuse me. Falkirk is our biggest town, and my colleague Pete, if he was here, would probably say he swore after Bowness he would never do another one of these. Shows you how hard they are. A tremendous amount of negotiation with a mix of land ownership. But we did do it again in Falkirk, and we done a lot of preparatory work on surveys, appraisals, a lot of hoops to jump through, and we had consultants on board, and we'd done a project in the town centre, and it was over. I mean, the project itself was over 3 or 4 years, but there was a big lead-in time, 4 or 5 years lead-in time. And it tried to do a number of things in that area of Falkirk within that kind of yellow line. Anybody, if you know Falkirk, that's the sort of steeple there. And these are the main routes, north and south. It wasn't really the high street. It was more the kind of secondary shopping areas, not your big companies, your banks on the high street. And a number of buildings were priority buildings in red. Again, there were shop fronts. regilding the cockerel. Richies were involved in the clock, removing all sorts of pigeon droppings from the steeple. The top of the steeple was ready to drop off. It was held by one bar. A whole bunch of works there to try and put life back into the secondary shopping areas. And we know this isn't going to counteract against new shopping, online shopping in the macroeconomic circumstances, but it is going to enhance and protect some of that heritage for a long time, we would hope. Another slide in Falkirk. These are some of the outputs here. I'm not going to go through them. You can read them at your leisure. But a huge amount of outputs with a lot of private landowners improving paths. A lot of the units were empty, so we had to try and focus on some of these economic units. And there was a lot of training. David mentioned training. 1,000 young people were involved in training heritage skills there. And we engaged a massive engagement programme through schools, school packs, education colleges, all layers of education. And we involved Falkirk Local History Society, and there was tour guides involved as well, taking people around the town centre. And that's us getting an award with the then minister there a few years back. Oh, and we had a British Geological Survey. David mentioned quarries. We had a BGS survey to inform where the stone came from. And it was a Scottish quarry, and it was used to patch a lot of the buildings. The picture there's the gentleman at the top of the steeple to do that. Those are fantastic projects. I've just quickly skimmed through a few other pieces of work here on planning. Larbert House, near Larbert Hospital, we'll come on to that in the next slide. Rosebank Distillery, I've already mentioned at the canals. Cairn Grove House, any of you are from Denny, I know Pat is, we mentioned that. Up at Stonywood there, that was the centrepiece of that development, a whole new housing development up there in Denny. Some of the other work we've done as a team has been in the conservation areas. We've done a great wee project a number of years ago in the Earth Conservation Area, pedestrianising a street where we had the wonderful Merkett Cross, running the risk of Arctic lorries going past it on ice, or combine harvesters. It was kind of marooned in the sea tarmac. That's been built into the public realm. Muir Houses, or the Murrays as it's called, a nice little public rail scheme with a suitable bus stop, quite small. Fantastic amount of work over 3 or 4 years, which has just been completed last week. There'll be press releases coming out about that. About 600 grand spent on the listed wall at Kinneil Wall Garden, with wonderful new rattle forged gates there. That's the contractors there on the right hand side. We've been doing works to Bowness Foreshore Harbour, the old wall there. Any of you know Falkirk Church? The archway was in significant decline. There was a great little project there to improve, with best conservation standards, the archway from the high street into the church. And there's been a good little battlefield trail up near Callendar Estate in Falkirk. I'll show you a link to that later. That's a fantastic trail round the Battle of Falkirk Muir. Some of you, if you haven't been on it, I'd recommend it. It's fantastic. The topic of the chat was for some future projects. I thought I'd give you a teaser about some future projects. And there's two at the bottom there, the Bruce Obelix. Those 3 pictures there. I'm really excited about this, and I'm sure if David was here, even though he doesn't get excited very often, he would be excited about this, being Mr. Iron. David has agreed to help fund that as well, Historic Scotland, and so has the council. And the idea is there that James Bruce, the Abyssinian traveller, the discoverer of Blue Nile, I'm sure Jeff can give you talks on this, and Jeff's done a fantastic paper. The idea is there to relocate that from its existing inauspicious location in the bottom car park, open to theft, damage, vandalism, back into the Larbert Old Church graveyard, to try and give that a sense of place. And I know there's been work on colouring and stuff as well, which is all to be agreed, but I know Jeff's done some great work on that. And it only got planning permission just last week, so we're there. We've got a bit of a funding gap, but we're really hopeful that really important Cairn Company link, Larbert link through Iron, we can really shout about that and do a good job on that, conservation work on it, relocate it, and do the fantastic work to help promote that within the community. The other one, bottom right corner, is the Bowness Bandstand up at the old Bowness Town Hall. That one had some serious damage a few years ago. We had to make it safe, but there's a scheme being done there as well. If David was still here, I'd be asking him for money, but I will be calling him later, don't worry. So that's just a quick range. I mentioned Larbert House. If any of you have the misfortune to go to Larbert Hospital, you might not be aware of this, but if you're not, please go for a walk round. There's been a fantastic story there, which has been totally plan-led by the council over probably decades, to try and get a good resolution there to the listed building, which was a building at risk, which mysteriously went on fire between Christmas and New Year one year. And we now have the building restored. There's enabling development and the stable block, and also a design landscape there. The NHS were involved. On the one hand, we brought the Forestry Commission in, then Forestry Commission, Forestry Land Scotland, now our partner CSFT, who took on a lot of the wider estate. And they do, mental health work with the hospital in that design landscape. And that whole partnership, and it was plan-led, created that sense of confidence for the developers to come in to do that. And even things like the Maggie's Centre, which, if you are unfortunate enough to go there, obviously the cancer centre, that's a fantastic wee building down near the loch at Larbert Loch. Would they have came there if the design landscape wasn't enhanced? Probably not. But again, there's a big planning story behind that, which I don't have time to go into today, but I'm happy to at future references. I won't mention much about the the 4 parks. Needless to say, there's fantastic built heritage assets there, not least the council's vision taking on the Forbes pile up at Callendar House with the archives and museums, and the guardianship agreement in place with Historic Scotland at Kinneil Estate. But there's one park I did want to go into a bit more detail on, and that's Zetland Park. And some of you may be aware there's been an amazing project delivered by my team in the last 3 years, which has taken about 7 years to get there. £2.5 million project. Far too much to cover me now, and I won't try to. I will make a plug for, at risk of annoying the Fourth Naturalist Historian, a plug for the Local History Society, Falkirk Local History Society. There's a talk this Wednesday at 7:30 up in the Falkirk Trinity Church by my 2 colleagues there in that bottom left picture, Alana Hughes and Jessica. These guys will tell you the full story. Please go and listen to that if you can. But the 2 main built heritage items that came out of this were the memorial, which is up in the top right, and the fountain. Excuse me. Memorial B listed. What really helped was Historic Scotland listing that in 2016. A whole bunch of upgrades to the memorial gardens. You can see the gentleman there in his wheelchair, very, very poignant after yesterday, the 11th 11. That was the first time he could get up there in his wheelchair and lay a wreath at that monument. And some really fantastic ironwork restoration work to the memorial fountain, which I think even had David stumped about provenance as to which foundry or where that came from. Other heritage things was the bottom left picture. Well, sorry, apart from the picture with my colleagues, there's a fantastic heritage sundial there. And even things like the play park, bottom right picture there, that's a full-scale-ish replica of the Charlotte Dundas, which is really important for people at Grangemouth who actually for a port town can't get to the shore. They're hemmed in by industry and port. So again, interpreting to the children the importance of the port town, importance of the Charlotte Dundas. Absolutely amazing project, all built on improving the heritage of the area and a whole bunch of other outcomes, which I can't go into today, given the title, but it certainly has rejuvenated Portonian pride. The main things I'd flag about this is it's taken 10 years to get there, even though the project's 3 years. We're up for some Green Flag Awards. We find out on Tuesday. Keep your eyes on the news. We've really got our fingers crossed. Really excited about that. I swithered about putting this one in because I thought it was built heritage, and they are natural heritage, but all 3 of our local nature reserves come from an industrial heritage: Bonnyfield Sand and Gravel Quarry, Boreas Coal Mine, where my father worked actually, and Carron Dams, a wonderful story at Carron Dams. That's the bottom right-hand picture there. There's an amazing project, and we're still the current holders thanks to COVID, because they haven't met for 2 years, but the Scottish Awards for Quality and Planning, amazing project there, Carron Dams, called A Damn Thing Place, pardon the pun, where it won the overall winner, previous winners, Falkirk Wheel, massive, Holyrood Parliament, massive architectural things. Carron Dams won that one, and have a look at Spark and Grit, which is a fantastic community-led conversation on the whole Carron Dams. If you need more information on any of these, if you're more literate with digital than I am, you can go to Visit Falkirk, which has lots of things. You can get the Town Centre app from the App Store here. We had another lottery project called Great Places, which is all about stories and community stories. Falkirk Explored, fantastic app, and you can click on heritage or parks, and a range of people, some of in the room, might have contributed to that. Fantastic human stories about these heritage places. That was the Falkirk Muir Battlefield site I mentioned about. If you want to find out about that, Calendar Estate, it's on their website. And the John Muir Way, obviously the father of national parks conservation, that path we were involved in, it comes through Falkirk and links nearly all of our wonderful heritage attractions, Black Ness, Kinneil, up to the canal, Country Park, Calendar Park, Rough Castle, Roman Fort. It's almost like it was designed to go through these areas. But I thought I would end on the future thing, and I got my crystal ball out. That's the Esher Fall. Some of you may be familiar with Esher. What about the future? Well, it always comes down to money and resources. And as David alluded to, it's getting really, really, really tight. Falkirk Council has a £69 million deficit. Will there be people left to do these projects in the future? Will we be able to enter into THI projects and find our part of the deal? We're very lucky to have good people at the moment. Will we have these people in the future? But I think also from your own domestic arrangements or societies, the cost of living, COVID cost of living, Brexit, and now it looks like we're going to be in a recession. Will people have money to invest in memberships to some of the wonderful environmental charity organisations? Will they have money to put into their properties for built heritage? And all these questions, we might get onto that, some of the questions, but I am really concerned about where heritage sits in that pecking order. I think we've got absolutely bags of policies, but I think we haven't got enough resources. That's just a bottom line, and I think it's shrinking. Current and future projects, projects can't just be about the heritage. David mentioned that. It has to be about poverty. It has to be about tourism, whether we like it or not. It has to be about economic development. It has to be a whole range of things that are important to people and councils and partners. And if it's not, forget it. And you better have a really, really healthy contingency, because the way inflation's going, things that cost 50 grand 6 months ago now cost 70 or 80 grand. So everything's going against us here. It's not just heritage, it's going against all sectors. You need to line up all these ducks, and we've been really good at that, I think, as a council and with partners, getting the land together, the policies, consents, the political support, incredibly important, and getting communities involved. But I think as the public sector shrinks, I think community groups and communities are going to have to step up that ladder of participation. And all the models and the legal instruments are there. Community asset transfer, it takes more stuff on. The council has a community choices fund, where it's basically like the X factor. You vote for the cash, and who has most votes wins. That's democracy in action. Or even participatory budgeting, where rather than the council spending the money, the communities and the public decide where they spend that money. And I think that's great, and that's the direction of travel. I'd like to finish on this one before a wee video. Get your popcorn out. But these are really questions for you. You decide whether we've answered these or not. But the Falkirk sense of place, who we are as a Falkirk Bairn, so much of what defines you is your environment, where you live, the diversity. Has there been concentrated effort along heritage? I think there has. Has the policy partnership work made a difference? I think it has. You can answer that yourself. Does it feel like it's an improved sense of place? The local development plan tries to have an impartial look at that, and it says the area looks and feels better than it did. We've got good examples of design. It's starting to shape a more positive image than the industrial past. There's a wealth of assets. We've got a more coordinated approach thanks to all the partners. We've got a World Heritage Site, conservation areas are praised, but there are a number of historic buildings that are still buildings at risk and redundant. So most of them are in private ownership. And unless we get all these things together, there's still work to do. Where we are in the pecking order as budgets shrink with education and an ageing population and healthcare, I'm not too sure. And I think I will have to come out of this if I have time, and I'm probably over